Hey, so, episode 2. Look, after the interminable wait between last season and this one, there's still a little bit of a thrill that fills me every time the opening credits come up, like this excitement of, oh, it's actually back. Season 3 had since become this almost mythological thing. I knew it was coming in theory. I was seeing the trailers and the hints and everything, but I wasn't quite ready to believe it until I saw it. Kind of the same way I feel about Star Wars Episode 7. But every time, I'm believing it a little bit more with every passing week with every new episode. Now that said, I wasn't as in love with Episode 2 as I was with Episode 1. Episode 1 I thought was a great slow burn, a really good palate cleanser coming into the season. It focused on Hannibal's state of mind, it was quite slow, it was quite reflective, and it was a really good setup for the new style coming into the Italian chapter of this story. That said, Episode 2 I felt was a repeat of Episode 1 and not quite in a good way. The pace was snail-like. I mean, really, do we need a 6-minute recap of the last scene of Season 2? We've seen it. We've spent the last year obsessing over it. We've probably rewatched it many, many times. We want to know who's alive and who's dead. The Abigail Hobbs reveal was initially shocking, but of course I think most of us figured out pretty quickly that she was only in Will's head. That said, I thought that was really well handled. I'll get to that in a moment. And I mean, really, look, I like the dark, fucked up imagery as much as anyone else does. But at a certain point, I want some crazy twists. I want reveals like the one halfway through last season that Hannibal had been framing Dr. Chilton the whole time. I want manipulations and machinations similar to how Hannibal sets Mason, Will, and Margot against each other. Now, obviously, we're 2 episodes in. That's not really going to happen yet. But it does feel a little bit like there is a real strong emphasis on the visual artistic aspect and not so much on the plot. And I'm very conscious of the fact that only half this season is really going to be focused on this Italian chapter, and then we're going to go off into Red Dragon territory. It just feels like it's time to get a wriggle on. And we still don't know what happened to Jack and Alana. Just at this point, we need to know. Brian Fuller did say that he chose the 1 season 2 story structure to avoid treading water. At the moment, we're beginning to run the risk of feeling like that's what we're doing. Anyway, I'm still in love with the show. And there was a lot to love in this episode. The Abigail stuff, amazing, but I'll get to that again. Patsy is a great character from the novels. They seem to have merged him a little bit with Inspector Pophill from Hannibal Rising, which again I love. I mean, I hate Hannibal Rising, but it is fun to see little callbacks and shout-outs and taking the aspect of Patsy where he's been obsessed with hunting Hannibal for years, very much part of Pophill. I quite appreciate it. He also was a great introduction to the main theme of this episode, which was regret. Regret as personified by Abigail. See, when Will says at the start, the wrong thing being the right thing to do was too ugly a thought, this is what is weighing over him this whole episode. Because Will is realizing that if he had given in to his worst impulses, if he had gone with Hannibal and Abigail, nobody would have died. Nobody would have been hurt. He went against what he wanted to do the right thing and try to hunt Hannibal, and as a result of it, Abigail died. So she's haunting him like this ghost, this human personification of this horrible, twisted regret he has at the fact that maybe, just maybe, the right thing to do was the wrong thing. At the end of season 2, Will had that moment where he was talking to both Hannibal and Jack at the start of the final episode, and their faces kind of merged together, suggesting, well, which way is he going to go? We don't really know. In the end, I do believe, and there's still a bit of ambiguity, particularly with Will calling Hannibal to warn him Jack was coming, which I think was for Jack's sake, not Hannibal's. I'm sure we'll find out in weeks to come. But I think Will did choose the Jack side of thing at the end. Particularly, he pulled out his gun when he went to Hannibal's house. He was ready to fight, and he lost. But that doesn't mean that he necessarily wanted to do that. He did that because it was the right thing to do, but is that what he wanted to do in his heart? I don't think so, and that's what's hanging over him going into this season. And that's something I think we probably have to know going into whatever's coming next. That said, it was a really strong theme. The scene of the reveal of Abigail, even though we knew it was coming, was immensely powerful. When Will says to her, "No place was made for you, Abigail," the blood starts gushing out. You know, I had tears because Abigail Hobbs has potentially died 3 times over the course of this series. She's a character I personally like a lot. I know a lot of other people do. And seeing her finally put to rest, as it were, seeing the scene of Will surviving and being stitched up while Abigail is finally laid down and prepared for presumably her funeral, was a really powerful stuff. It's a really emotional scene, and after having Abigail given back to Will in the finale and now taken away again, we see how much of an effect that's had on him. We see how much that's haunting him, and I suppose that is absolutely imperative. That said, it's not much of a hook to hang a whole episode on. And for me, that really felt like what I walked away affected by, gripped by, but there was other stuff going on, and that stuff just felt very padding-y. I think there was probably a better way to introduce Patsy, like a way that was more plot-related, because I guess in weeks to come, we've seen that he's going to be involved with Jack Crawford in some way. But seeing him involved in this role to just stand around and be kind of a sounding board for Will and just sort of make vague proclamations, I don't think it was quite enough, and it honestly felt a little bit padded. Now, that said, it's still my favourite show on TV. It's by far not the worst episode they've ever done, and it's still leaving me salivating with anticipation at what is to come. I can't wait for episode 3. I can't wait to see this plot starting to move along. The characters are now in a really good... All we need is Jack and Alana, and the characters are in a really good position to start fucking shit up. I'm still pumped. Bring on the next few episodes.